Hello and welcome to Ron Paul Curriculum Public Speaking Course number 70. My name is Abigail and I'm 14 years old. I was born in Mesa, Arizona, but I moved to the Philippines when I was 4 years old. I lived in Metro Manila, which is the central area of the large island Luzon. We moved for my father's job where he opened an engineering business. We lived there for 9 years and about 1.5 years ago, we moved to New England. This summer will be starting fashion colleges in New York, and I enjoy fashion and vintage. I often dress in vintage, as I've mentioned previously. I haven't done it a lot on this channel, but that's okay. I have started a fashion business and am sewing a Frida Kahlo skirt for a ballet right now. I have sewn costumes and worked on costuming for my local theater's play of Grease, and I did that last March, October to March. I started sewing when I was a toddler. My mom taught me basic home economics, and I was taught how to hand sew and how to knit and crochet and things like that. I started sewing clothing for my dolls when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I started sewing on a sewing machine seriously and with passion when I was 9 or 10 years old. I sewed the first thing I made was a dog blanket. I then sewed a gathered waistband skirt, several of them, lots of pinafores. I sewed a couple of dresses, and I was very into Lolita fashion at the time, which I'm not proud of. It's a very interesting thing, especially since I was like 11 at the time. I just thought the frilly pink was very cute. And if you're worried about what Lolita is, I promise, just look up the fashion subculture. It's not anything creepy, I promise. The name is totally unrelated to the American pop culture side of it, so yeah. Around the age of, I believe I was 12, I wore a vintage-inspired look after finding a vintage hair tutorial online. I wore it with a simple LL Bean polka dot blue dress, something very kitschy and pin-up-y, but I thought it was pretty cute. My mother mentioned to me how she thought I looked really great in vintage, and so I was like, okay, sure, whatever, and then I ended up really enjoying it and loving it, and I've done it for about 2 years now. My anniversary for vintage is on Thanksgiving. One of my biggest inspirations for sewing was Angela Clayton. She was a seamstress starting at the age of 16. She started a YouTube channel and a blog, and was sewing a lot of historical costumes and things of the like, which I also am very interested in. She's 21 now, which is hard to believe, but, you know, I grew up with her and that was pretty great. Well, not literally. Grew up watching her things. I will say, if you start sewing, it will get easier with time. I have a lot of questions about sewing that are asked to me. A lot about where should I buy my first machine, where to get fabric, what do I start with, and I will say start with something easy. I know that's not always what people want to hear. I was especially stubborn when I started sewing. I wanted to sew massive ball gowns and intense, crazy projects, but luckily my sewing teacher at the time, Amanda, was very good at grounding me and teaching me, yes, we start with the simple things and then move forward to the bigger things, and it's very important to realize that, otherwise you'll have catastrophic failure that will depress you greatly. I will say that part of something I've learned a lot with fashion is not to worry so strictly about guidelines and forcing yourself into one subculture or subgenre of fashion, and not to only have one look. You can have several looks. Just because you do vintage, and this is something that's very big in the vintage community, does not need to be true vintage clothes. You don't have to wear vintage every day. You don't have to do that. It's your style. You get to do what you want, and that's that. If you have any questions or any comments, please let me know in the comments. And I will see you next week. Goodbye.